Video of large orbs being escorted by military helicopters in Arizona are likely reverse-engineered spacecraft. Former NASA Chief of Aerospace Medicine comes forward as UFO whistleblower. Joe Rogan interviews Dr. Hal Puthoff, who reveals UFO crash retrieval operations around the world. Congressman Eric Burlinson describes how classified UFO sensitive compartmented information facility briefing did not go ahead due to a delay with David Grush getting a security clearance. The vacuum train was capable of a top speed of 14,000 miles per hour and could travel from LA to New York in just 21 minutes. These stories and more on Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review.
You're listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Welcome to the May 10 edition of Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review. We have some very interesting stories to cover this week. So I want to begin with an article that was released on an online website or magazine called The Drive, and it discusses a high-speed underground maglev vacuum train that was proposed in 1972 by a RAND employee, Robert Salter. The vacuum train was capable of a top speed of 14,000 miles per hour, which is around, I would say that's, 20,000 kilometers per hour, and could travel from LA to New York in just 21 minutes. The author of the article, Nico DiMattia, concludes that even though a vacuum train was technically possible, it was unbelievably difficult to build due to engineering and political challenges. So in the article, it discusses this inventor, this engineer, who said, yes, we can build a maglev train that can travel up to 14,000 miles per hour, but the technical difficulties and the political challenges were just too much for it to go ahead. But what we know from multiple whistleblowers like Phil Schneider, Daniel Barish, there's Gene Decode, many others, that the maglev vacuum train was built secretly. So this happened in early 1970s, and this was built, and this was used to connect over 160 deep underground military bases or DUMBs in the US and surrounding territorial waters. So contrary to the Drive's conclusion, Salter's or similar ideas were secretly implemented in highly classified programs as early as 1972. So this is the way in which a lot of these white world inventions get classified and then get shelved. The same thing happened for anti-gravity in the mid-1950s. Actually, I think it was early to mid-1950s. There were a number of articles that came out in engineering journals saying that anti-gravity was possible and could be built and would revolutionize the airplane industry. And then, like, all of a sudden, it was like everything was gone. No more discussions. People who were talking about it wouldn't talk about it. Articles that were coming out in these prestigious engineering journals just stopped appearing. And this is the way in which classified programs work. If there's been a major development in the white world or the open source world, then what happens is that the people in the covert world associated with the military, associated with corporations said, yes, we can use that idea. Let's classify it. And we'll tell the inventor that, hey, you work with us. And if you don't, well, the carrots and sticks. So you don't want to know what the stick is if you value a healthy life or a long life. So that's the way it worked. And the same thing happened. We know based on whistleblowers that the same thing happened with the maglev train that was conceptualized in the early 1970s, and that this engineer came up with the schematics, the engineering for it, this Robert Salter, and then the classified the classified world, the black world of covert programs came in and took it over, gave Salter, some carrots, and that is why we haven't heard of it. But right now, these maglevs continue to operate under our feet and also under the oceans, especially near the United States. So while the Drive article seeks to motivate us to think big and create such a vacuum train system in the future, so this is the idea, right? Oh, well, this is what was theorized in 1972. We should build it so that it's real by the year 2040 or something. It's like, no. What we need to do actually is disclose the truth about classified deep underground military bases and the maglev trains connecting them, and convert this classified transit system into a mass transit system that is available to the general public. So that's the way you do it. So just as you would travel to an airport to go to another city in the United States or another country, similarly, you just go to one of these dumb facilities or one of these places where this maglev train stops. You just go there and off you go. So that would be one way of doing it. So anyway, this I think was a very interesting story. Okay, so here's a story: the higher self and ET communications through quantum healing hypnosis techniques. So this was an interview I did with Sarah Breskman-Cosmere, where she replied to some criticisms made against her that she was advocating on behalf of grey extraterrestrials. And so I thought that was a very interesting criticism, given the role of QHHT in having people go into a higher state of consciousness where a connection is made to a higher self, where typically the higher self guides the QHHT session so that people can go to different past lives and bring up those memories again. Now, Sarah made a comment in a video about some extraterrestrials, particularly the greys, would use these sessions like a telephone line. They would come through. And so in our interview, I wanted to find out, what is the role of the higher self, which is critical for a QHHT session, so people can retrieve accurate information about past lives, and more importantly, retrieve it so that they get healed. Because this is the thing about QHHT, is that as you remember past life events, then some of those events, traumatic or whatever it was, when you recall them, some injuries or illnesses that you have in your current life get healed. And when I first came across QHHT, I interviewed Sarah, and we discussed the case of Jen Sullivan, who had essentially had a brain aneurysm, I think it was, or something in the brain that was wrong with the brain. And so she couldn't work it out. It was a problem for years and years, splitting migraines and all of that. And so she did a QHHT session with Sarah, and that QHHT session where she recalled a past life in Atlantis, well, actually, no, earlier than Atlantis, in Lemuria, where she was like the leader of this Lemurian society, and how things went wrong, how that civilization was destroyed by Atlanteans. She recalled that, and this brain injury that she suffered, a brain tumor, I think it was, a brain tumor, that she had this tumor, and that was healed. So QHHT is something that makes a connection with a person's higher self, and that higher self directs the session or the person conducting the QHHT to some past life where they experience something which is relevant to whatever it is they're experiencing now, or whatever injury, health condition, or what it is that the person wants to know about their life. Now, Sarah was finding that sometimes extraterrestrials would come through, and in particular, these grey extraterrestrials would come through. And so that meant, because she follows the QHHT protocol of making a connection with the higher self, that the higher self was approving that. And so because of that, Sarah says that all of the grey ETs that came through were benevolent. She's never came across any negative ETs, and that and she came up with the term ascended grey. Now, there are positive grey extraterrestrials, and we know that from the literature, but the majority of greys that people are familiar with are ones that are involved in abductions or hybridization programs. So they're definitely not highly evolved. But they're conducting these sessions, or these hybridization experiments, and that appears to be part of this kind of long-term grey agenda of replacing humanity with these hybrids. So what I wanted to do is just kind of get an idea of exactly who is communicating with the client and the QHHT practitioner in these sessions. Is it a highly evolved grey, as Sarah believes, or was there some kind of deception or trickery involved, as others claim? So I thought that this is a very interesting question, because I know that many people that are, let's just say, proponents or supporters of the grey hybridization program, they say that, well, the person's higher self gave permission for them to be abducted and to be subjected to these genetic experiments where sexual material is removed or inserted. So people are, by our standards, abused. But nevertheless, this is something that proponents or supporters of these grey abductions suggest, that the higher self gives approval to that. So, I think that the big question here is, what role does a person's higher self play in either giving approval or stopping something like a grey abduction, and also allowing greys to come through in these QHHT sessions? So I think those are very interesting questions. Whether you believe in positive grey extraterrestrials or not, I think this interview with Sarah does raise very interesting questions. And of course, from her perspective, the only greys she has come in contact with through these sessions are these benevolent or ascended greys that she believes exist. And the negative greys, they don't come through, presumably because they are kind of violating people's wishes or will, and so she just hasn't come across them. So anyway, very interesting interview. Okay, so this weekend, actually today, Saturday, will be the first day of the Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection Conference in Eastbourne, London. So Elena Danan, JP, Tony Rodriguez, and I will be presenting virtually. Unfortunately, because of I'm still recovering from the kind of hospital stays I had and the health issues I had, and I've come off the antibiotics and I'm feeling much better, but I'm not really ready yet to jump on an airplane and to be exposed to all those germs being circulated in that pressure cooker there. I think I need a couple of months to do that. So I should be good for July for the France conference, but I unfortunately couldn't make it to England. But the England conference, at the England Eastbourne conference, I'll be doing a virtual presentation on whistleblower revelations. So for those of you that are there or are thinking about going, I'll be doing a virtual presentation on the Sunday. Okay, so here's a tweet that discusses the US government's UFO crash retrieval program in terms of a risk-reward failure. So let's have a look at this. So this article, or this tweet by the Disclosure Party, says the risk-reward formula for the US government's crash retrieval and reverse engineering programs has prioritized secrecy and control over innovation and accountability. Instead of open competition or transparent research and development pipelines, a small group of defense contractors and private aerospace firms have allegedly been granted exclusive access to exotic materials or technologies without meaningful oversight, deliverables, or performance metrics. So, this is really not allegedly. It's we know from the overwhelming number of whistleblowers who have come forward that this is exactly what has happened when it comes to anything involving advanced technologies, whether we're talking about anti-gravity, maglev train systems, time travel, that all of this has been developed with these defense contractors and private aerospace firms behind a wall of secrecy and control without any meaningful oversight, deliverables, or performance metrics. Risk. Giving this technology to a limited group reduced national security exposure and minimized leaks. However, this creates enormous risk of fraud, mismanagement, and stagnation. And I think that's a very good point, that when these classified programs were set up, without the accountability, without the transparency, there was a lot of fraud and mismanagement and stagnation also, because you don't have the best and brightest people working on these classified programs. This is again and again the complaint of scientists who have worked in classified programs, that due to the compartmentalized nature of that program, they can't share with colleagues what they're working on. So if they're working on, anti-gravity propulsion, for example, they can't share with a colleague to bounce ideas off. And that's how a lot of scientists and academics operate. You have your colleagues, you bounce ideas off them, and you develop breakthroughs. But when you are in a compartmentalized, classified facility where you can't share, things stagnate. And that's the problem. Innovation suffers, and I think this is part of the risk. The reward. Technological breakthroughs that could yield next-generation propulsion, energy or materials, science advances. So this is where you do have a reward for whoever it is that's in charge of that program, or that classified technology, that they reap the benefits. If they develop anti-gravity or a maglev train system, they are able to get all the profits because they have the exclusive contracts. No competition contracts with the military, with within the kind of classified world, the military industrial complex, the intelligence community, any products that are developed, it's like non-competitive contracts because, for example, Lockheed has developed the anti-gravity TR-3B, for example. So it's only Lockheed that gets the contracts. And if someone wants 10 TR3Bs, Lockheed gets to fulfill that contract and make an enormous profit in the process. So the results, the outcome has been high risk and low reward. There has been no verified scientific progress. Oversight has failed, fraud and waste have gone unchecked. National security is now used as an excuse to hide failure. The main achievement has been creating a taxpayer-funded scam that keeps contractors rich while producing nothing but redacted reports and broken promises. So this is very interesting because I think there's a lot of truth to this, but we don't want to suggest that that there's been a lot of failure in these attempts to reverse engineer captured alien spacecraft, for example, because we know from whistleblowers that there has been success. Now, as far as some of the whistleblowers who are getting a lot of mainstream attention, people like David Grush, Luis Elizondo, even Bob Lazar, there has not been any successful reverse engineering by corporations. And so this is the view that dominates amongst such people, that this kind of classified, heavily classified world where these projects are all compartmentalized, that this is all a massive failure. But we know that that's not true, that there has been some important successes here. Now, this is where I bring up a revelation from Ben Rich, the person who headed Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works and probably built the TR-3B. He said towards the end of his life, or after he retired, at an event to a trusted colleague, he said, quote, "We already have the means to travel among the stars, but these technologies are locked up in black projects and it would take an act of God to ever get them out to benefit humanity." So this is part of the problem. So legacy aerospace contractors, Lockheed, Raytheon, etc., will never declassify their crash retrieval and reverse engineering programs that have been successful. They'll probably disclose the ones that have not been successful, which is what David Grush and Luis Elizondo and Bob Lazar have been talking about, but not the ones that have been successful. So the only way to develop open competition and transparent research and development pipelines is to have innovators and companies, newer companies, such as Elon Musk's SpaceX, given some of the recovered UFO tech and reinventing the wheel. Because I don't think these legacy companies are ever going to give up their secrets that have been developed over many decades. And of course, they can claim proprietary control of that information, and the government can't force them, or it would be extremely difficult to prize those kind of programs away from these legacy corporations. So I think what's going to happen in the future is that companies like SpaceX are given some of the recovered UFO technology, and they will reinvent the wheel. That, I think, is the way it will happen. Okay, so here is some very sad news. Robert Potter passed away on May 5. Now, Rob was a powerhouse when it came to finding and promoting extraterrestrial contactees over several decades. I know he goes all the way back to the 1970s, where he began working with the legendary Dr. Fred Bell, who was a Pleiadian contactee. So I attended one of Rob's legendary Mount Shasta conferences that gave a platform to contactees to share their incredible stories. And you need to keep in mind that most UFO conferences rarely have contactees come forward. They typically will have people coming forward who talk about abductions and, oh, the little greys, they stuffed something up my anal orifice, and they did all these terrible things to me. And so you have those kinds of stories coming out at these UFO conferences. You don't have this, the contactee reports of like, I met the Space Brothers, and boy, the women were so hot. Oh, you just can't believe how beautiful they were. You don't get those stories. But at the Mount Shasta conference that Rob organized, this is where the contactees could come forward and talk about their incredible experiences. I did interview Rob once on my Exopolitics Today show, and was, funnily enough, planning to invite him to another, but now he's gone. And I heard from Alex Collier, who actually told me about Rob's passing, that he and Rob had a conversation that day, and Rob was going to contact me. So, it's like we were about to contact one another, but he died in his sleep. So I wrote a description for Rob in our 2022 interview. So let me read it out to you just to kind of honor Rob, because I think he played a vital role, and he really was a beautiful soul, a great person to meet, and just a lot of love. People who knew Rob just felt so much love exuding from him. So in the mid-1970s, at age 16, Robert Potter visited NASA scientist and extraterrestrial contactee Dr. Fred Bell, who introduced Rob to the advanced physics, technologies, and philosophies of the Pleiadians. Rob spent many years working closely with Dr. Bell, who became his friend, mentor, and benefactor. Rob has also worked with many other extraterrestrial contactees over the following decades, which include Dr. Frank Strangers, Howard Menger, Gabriel Green, Luis Fernando Mertens, Omnek Onek, and most recently with Dr. Ray Keller. Rob has organized many conferences and tours discussing extraterrestrials from Venus, Saturn, the Pleiades, etc., and he's best known for his legendary Mount Shasta conferences. And I believe one was scheduled for July of this year. I'm not sure what's going to happen to that, if it'll go ahead or not, but definitely you can go to the promiserevealed.com. That's the website, and see what it is that is planned for this Mount Shasta conference for 2025. I hope it does go ahead and honors Rob, who really was a beautiful man, and he'll be missed by many of us. Okay, so here is a video extract from my recent interview with JP, where he discusses how avatar clones are used in a covert program out of Eglin Air Force Base for deep space operations using soldiers hooked up to advanced consciousness transferring technology. So help it go viral. Yeah, so if you can, go over to this Instagram link. I will have in the description of this week in review, there'll be links to all of my Twitter feeds. So just click the link for JP and click that, and then that'll give you the connection to this video extract. So let me play some of that for you.
I looked at him, and he's like, yes, they're here.
Can you just kind of hold it there for a moment? So when you say these soldiers are connected to other soldiers, are we talking something like in the Avatar movies where there's explain.
So he was explaining, and he was saying that their brain waves and their electrical waves were quantum connected to other soldiers that are working in the vicinity of our solar system. So, and I asked him, is it their clone, or do they have a clone? And do they have something connected to them? He says, yeah, they have their DNA in these other types of machines. So apparently we have machines out there, right? That they don't.
He's talking about these avatars operating out of a military facility, and JP revealed that it's actually Eglin Air Force Base, which is where he spent the majority of his 4 years of Army service. And that there was a facility there, and he was taken to that facility, and there was this a room where there was, some sort of technology apparatus connecting these soldiers that were kind of inclined. They were sitting, they were inclined, and it was connecting them to this technology on the wall, and that this was some kind of consciousness transferring technology that would transfer the consciousness of the soldier to a clone body, essentially, somewhere in our solar system. So that's what JP described in a recent interview we did. So this video clip just is really JP trying to kind of like get this information out to a wider audience. So hopefully you can find that on Instagram and circulate it. Okay, so here's a tweet that concerns a transcript of Congressman Eric Burlinson describing how the classified UFO briefing in a SCIF facility that was scheduled for the I think it was the end of last month, did not go ahead as there had been a delay in David Grush getting the right security clearance. So here is the dialogue, which I think is something that was captured by a UFO researcher who gets people who work in the Congress to go on the record about UFOs and that kind of classified technology. So this is Representative Eric Burlinson, Task Force on Declassification of Federal Secrets. So this was what the topic was focused on. So the discussion involved this journalist, Matt Laszlo, and Eric Burlinson. So let me read the dialogue. Matt, what happened with the SCIF briefing this week? I've heard different things. Eric, we could not get in time. The whole goal was to get Grush and his expertise in the room with the SCIF. Yeah? Matt, yeah? Eric, and given that we were on the cusp of getting that approved, and the fact that the other reason was that we had everybody was jammed with meetings. Matt, yeah, because you guys just took a 2-week recess. Eric, it just makes sense that we're going to have we're moving it to that May 12 week. That will be UAP week. So what he's talking about is that sometime in this coming week, I mean, this is May 10 now where you're listening to this. So the coming week, May 12, Monday, there is going to be a UFO hearing convened by a subcommittee of the House Oversight Committee in the US Congress. And we're not quite sure who's going to appear there, but the witnesses that will appear will be presumably either experts or whistleblowers, or maybe both, who will be sharing what they know about some of these classified reverse engineering programs. So there can be some pretty major developments if you get more whistleblowers coming forward, like David Grush did in July of 2023, where he created a sensation where he said he knew of up to 40 people that were aware of ongoing crash retrieval programs and reverse engineering by various corporations. So hopefully we get to kind of get that level of information coming through this hearing, because subsequent hearings have been a little disappointing because they just had experts talking about UFO sightings, which is just so ho-hum these days, given the number of whistleblowers that have come forward to talk about crash retrieval programs. So it went on, the interview went on. Yeah, Eric Matt, do you know, have you heard back about his clearance, or is that part of it? Eric, right now he at least got top secret clearance. Matt, yeah? Eric, so right now he's working on, it's like clearance to talk about special programs, the special access programs. So I think it's like TSSS, it's actually SCI. It's actually top secret, sensitive, compartmented information. So you need to have in addition to top secret clearance, you also need to have a sensitive, compartmented information clearance as well to be able to go into a skiff and hear these kinds of, to hear the really top, well, the about the compartmented SCI information, which is above top secret. So some information that's top secret, David Grush essentially has the clearance for that, can talk about it, but he hasn't been given this SCI clearance or authorization so that he can talk about compartmented programs. So anyway, so that gives you an idea that the bureaucracy kind of delayed David Grush getting the right clearance, and that this is how they can prevent congressmen like Burlinson and others from hearing from Grush about, these compartmentalized programs that require SCI clearance. All right, so there's a documentary that's been put out by Space Force. It goes for about 20 minutes, and it's pitched at getting the US Congress to give more funding to Space Force so it can protect the satellite infrastructure that Americans rely on for modern life. So, the whole 20-minute documentary just goes over how we have become dependent on satellite infrastructure and how important it is that Space Force is funded sufficiently so that it can protect all of that from hostile actors in space. And it talks about China conducting an anti-satellite weapons test and how this is something that needs to be defended against if countries like China suddenly decide that the US satellite system needs to be knocked down so that they can launch a war, say, against Taiwan to take it over or something like that. So not surprisingly, the documentary doesn't mention UFOs, as that takes us into the classified realm of visiting extraterrestrial life, multiple secret space programs, such as the Navy's Solar Warden program. So, that's not a big surprise that it didn't mention these things, but certainly because Space Force is focused on, what's going into, what's in space, and what's coming out of space, those three qualifiers in terms of space, naturally they're interested in UFOs and extraterrestrial life. But of course, they don't discuss it in the documentary for obvious reasons. But we know that Space Force will evolve into doing much more than protecting US and allies' satellite infrastructure. The process has already begun to integrate Space Force with these classified programs. I hear about white hats working on some deep space programs and how Space Force is now read into some of these deep space programs using, the advanced anti-gravity technologies, for example. But it's just beginning, apparently. When that process reaches a certain threshold, then we will have many interesting official disclosures concerning these classified programs and the technologies used in them. So I think Space Force will be used as part of the disclosure project to roll out some advanced technology like anti-gravity. And that would be a good way of doing it, for example, rather than just coming out in Congress and saying, oh, well, anti-gravity technology has been developed and reverse engineered from alien life. You actually fly a TR-3B or some other anti-gravity spacecraft that's been reverse engineered, and you just show it. It's just there, lands at the White House like a helicopter lands there. So you get one of these anti-gravity craft to land there, and these guys, these astronauts coming out with Space Force kind of insignia come out and greet the president, President Trump, or whoever's in office at the time. Here is a very significant story, and it appeared on Reddit. That's right. Yeah, Reddit. It appeared on the Reddit forum. So there was an anonymous electrical engineer who released a BAS document. That's the Bigelow Advanced Aerospace Space Program, something like that. That released this document that, the document, I'm not sure what level of secrecy it had. It may have been restricted access, or it may have been confidential. But anyway, it was released, and this is what this engineer said in an interview, or said through the Reddit series. So let's see what this person had said. So here's a summary. A former Department of Defense Black Project engineer, now terminally ill, revealed that the Tic Tac UFO is human-made and uses real operational gravitational propulsion developed through both reverse engineering and independent innovation. So that's very important, because we know that there has been an attempt to kind of like gaslight the general public that, yes, some UFOs have crashed, they've been retrieved, but the legacy corporations, despite decades and decades of attempts, have not been able to successfully reverse engineer them. And as I said before, that's just BS. We know that successful reverse engineering has happened, and this engineer confirms that. He describes successful experiment. Oh, well, here we go. He describes successful experiments involving Tesla turbines, rotating magnets, plasma toroids, and microwave systems that generate gravitational waves without the need for exotic materials. That's important, because Bob Lazar, back in 1988-89, he said that the flying saucer that he's worked on at the S4 facility at Area 51 used one of these exotic materials. It used antimatter and also moscovium. That moscovium was element 115, and that when it could be impacted in a way that it would generate antimatter, which would be part of the propulsion system. Well, this engineer said, no, you don't need that kind of exotic material at all. You can just have Tesla turbines, rotating magnets, plasma toroids. The engineer, Eric Fouché, said that the TR-3B that uses these plasma toroids, that when the plasma went around a kind of circular ring in the craft, and when it's highly pressurized, and when the plasma reaches a speed of 60,000 revolutions per minute, the anti-gravity effect kicks in, and it's generating gravitational waves. And even microwave systems can do this. So if you get, you can use these different methods to be able to generate gravitational waves. And the engineer accused Jay Stratton and Lou Elizondo of suppressing inventors and burying key technologies, claiming over 2,000 legacy programs exist to reverse engineer UAPs, with corporations like Lockheed and Booz Allen hoarding the breakthroughs. And that's exactly what's been happening. I mean, when I talked earlier about the risk-reward assessment of these classified programs, that these legacy corporations that were given these recovered technologies and built some reverse engineer craft, that they've been hoarding all the breakthroughs. Most explosively, he stated anti-gravity has been mastered to the point of interstellar capability, and it's been deliberately hidden. So this is confirmation of what Ben Rich, the former head of Skunkworks, said, that we have the technology to take ET home. That yes, indeed, that technology has been developed just using these methods. No exotic material required. The Tesla turbines, rotating magnets, plasma toroids, etc. That's all you need to achieve interstellar travel. It's quite remarkable. And of course, all of that's being kept secret in these classified programs. Okay, so here's a link to a segment of the Joe Rogan interview with Dr. Hal Puthoff, where they discuss UFO crash retrieval operations. I've transcribed it, given its significance for understanding that UFO crash retrievals are being conducted all over the world. Now, Dr. Hal Puthoff spent over 5 decades working on highly classified programs involving many exotic materials and topics, which he still can't discuss. And the fact that Hal Puthoff went on to the Joe Rogan show to reveal this information, that is disclosure. I mean, unofficial disclosure, but it is significant unofficial disclosure, and we really need to pay attention, because Hal Puthoff is one of those scientists who really knows a lot about these highly classified world. And I need to mention that according to Laura Eisenhower, who is the great-granddaughter of President Eisenhower, Puthoff was the one running the Mars program, that he was the one that was in charge of finding recruits, ensuring that the Mars program was sufficiently supplied, that there are bases on Mars. And Puthoff was read in and was actually running that from the Earth side thing. So, there hasn't been confirmation of that, but I believe that Laura Eisenhower was revealing some very important information about just how significant and how important Puthoff is in the classified world. So I think it's significant that he went onto the Joe Rogan show to discuss this. So let me read out the transcript. So Joe Rogan, how many of these crashed craft do you estimate there are that human beings have recovered? Actually, rather than me reading out the transcript, I think you probably will enjoy it more if you watch them talk about it. So let me play it for you. Okay.
How many of these crashed crafts do you estimate there are that human beings have recovered?
More than 10.
More than 10?
More than 10.
How many of them are in possession of people in the United States?
I meant more than 10 in possession of the United States.
What about worldwide?
Worldwide?
Do we have any data on that?
We have data, but it's classified. There's no way to really talk about it.
But so there's more, though. You could safely say it's not just the ones in the United States.
Not just the ones in the United States, and these...
are they equally distributed?
I don't know for sure in terms of data. I mean, we have our best data, of course, on our own retrievals.
But more than 10 retrieved in the United States.
More than 10 retrieved.
What is your take on Bob Lazar?
Okay, so there you have Puthoff, who is an incredibly highly qualified scientist that has been working for over 5 decades in many classified programs, revealing that in the United States alone, there have been more than 10 UFO crash retrieval operations. And that this has been also happening around the world, that other major countries, China, Russia, have had their own crash retrievals. And while he doesn't mention any numbers, we can imagine that, given the territory, the size of the United States, and its because I think there's a relationship between crash retrieval operations and nuclear weapons programs, that given all of that, certainly Russia, given its size and its vast number of nuclear missiles, has probably also had more than 10. And China also has a significant nuclear weapons program, and it has a large territory as well. And so it probably has somewhere around that figure of 10. So that gives us an idea of just how extensive UFO crash retrieval operations have been all over the world and the United States. And so, as I said, this is important disclosure. And I think what we are going to be witnessing over the next few years is that these UFO crash retrieval operations are going to be officially announced. And then at some point, they're going to announce that these craft have been successfully reverse engineered, and that's when they'll roll out the TR-3B and have it kind of appear over the White House, and it'll land or something, and the president will greet the astronaut, and it'll be covered by journalists, and that'll be one way to do disclosure, and of course that'll be Space Force. It'll be a Space Force TR-3B that lands the White House, and it'll be like, wow, here we go. This stuff has been reverse engineered. And I think after they've done that, revealed the existence of these successfully reverse engineered anti-gravity spacecraft, then they will start to reveal that actually, yes, extraterrestrials are here. This is where we got some of this technology. But don't be afraid, everyone, because we also have that technology. Right, so here's a former NASA chief of aerospace medicine who comes forward as a UAP or whistleblower. He's recently retired, Dr. Gregory Rogers, former chief of aerospace medicine, and he describes a classified video he saw in 1992 and this video showed a US-made flying saucer. Okay, so let's listen to his interview, or this segment. It just goes for a minute. Let me play it for you, and you hear directly from him what he saw in this video in 1992.
After holding this inside for 32 years, with me just retiring, I'm going to tell this story. All of a sudden, up on the screen comes this closed circuit television feed. It looked like an absolutely normal flight area. I was flying with the 41st Air Rescue Squadron. If you showed the hangar with my helicopter in it, it would have looked just like that, except it's not my helicopter. This thing's a flying saucer. Now then, I look at this thing and my mind is going crazy. A flying saucer? Are you kidding me? I would estimate that it was about 20 feet wide, probably 8 to 10 feet tall, and then it had the shallow dome on top of it. There were two guys to the bottom left, and they had on lab coats. Made me think that they're engineers. There were three guys over on the right side. I think one of them just about even, and then two up in the right side. They reminded me of technicians. after.
All right, so there you have this former chief of aerospace medicine at NASA talking about his, let's just say, the kind of air helicopter that he used and the team that he would go out and fly with, that they were being shown this closed circuit TV of a spacecraft, a flying saucer that was in the same hangar, the same hangar as the helicopter that he would normally fly out of that hangar. So his account supports two significant claims. First, it suggests that the US has possessed the capability to build ARV, or alien reproduction vehicles. Okay, and it also describes how he was shown this flying saucer video footage without the necessary security clearance, a situation known within the intelligence community as unintentional spillage. And I've heard this happen again and again, especially with doctors, that someone, you imagine you have someone who has a senior position in some classified program. A doctor helps them. The doctor has impeccable military credentials, maybe has security clearances, but not high enough to be able to have access to the program. And you want to thank the doctor because the doctor just healed you of something very serious. And, you want to thank him. And it's like the way you would thank him if you're a kind of senior official is like, hey, come with me. I want to show you something really cool. And I think that's what happened with Dr. Gregory Rogers. Okay, so here you have Ross Coulthart, who's talking about this video that shows a large orb being escorted by military helicopters in Arizona. So, he's just showing the video footage and discussing. So this is a promo for the segment that's going to be coming out on News Nation. Now, this interviewee talks about the video that he took of this large orb being escorted by a military helicopter. And again, I've heard that as kind of like the standard operating procedure for when some of these reverse engineered spacecraft are being tested, that they always send helicopters to accompany them. And I guess in case something goes wrong. And so this is an example, I think, of a reverse engineered anti-gravity craft that was secretly manufactured in an underground facility somewhere in Arizona, and that a corporation had built it, and the US military was testing it out and was kind of escorting it, providing security for this reverse engineered anti-gravity spacecraft that has the appearance of an orb, so something spherical, but it was very large, and I'm not sure exactly what size they said, but I think it's just one more example of how these reverse engineered anti-gravity craft are being kind of slowly rolled out, or being kind of like seen more and more in the public, because I think that's all part of the official disclosure that's coming our way. So that's it for this week's edition of Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review. Certainly some very interesting stories, and to all of those attending the conference in Eastbourne, London, or Eastbourne, England, I wish I could be there with you, but I do look forward to my virtual presentation on Sunday afternoon. So I will see you then. And to the rest of you, thank you for watching Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review. And I appreciate all of you that have supported me during this time when I did fall ill, and I have been recovering. And so a shout out to all my Patreon supporters. So thank you and aloha.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.